So let's call, I guess we can, we'll call the meeting to order here on March 27th. 7:09. First item up is to hear and approve the minutes of January 24th. And I want somebody, I'll take a moment on the minutes, somebody can make a motion while we get this link sent. Oh, not 124. It's the same link, but I'm not sure what different link. Maybe which, do you have it right on the computer? When it said invite, right on the.
That's what I did to Megan, and I typed her, the link that they got today, this afternoon, with the agenda, will be the link that they.
Complications from a fall.
Megan? Hey Megan, when you got in on the second link, which one did you use?
I'm getting more involved in.
I got in through one that was sent to me from the active meeting.
Yeah, so I sent her an invite.
You fall.
Send me that invite,
That's what happened to my
I'll forward that.
father when he fell, his head,
Send me that one.
and then all of a sudden,
Yeah, send that to me and I'll forward it to them.
Next week, and that's my biggest fear is
Trabuco.
falling.
Go, right?
Yeah.
Someone steady on his feet.
Trabuco@gmail.com. Okay. Okay. And I'll get that, and we'll let them in.
How's your leg?
cleared
Let's see, we gotta forward that. Waiting to forward.
soon, but I was cleared
Forward
yesterday.
to
All
Brian.
to just like ease into it
Wait, okay, Laura to
Monday now, but yeah.
And Walter.
What are you working on?
He's been running.
Work
I've
in
been
Stanford.
riding.
I do?
Full-
Can't, no, I mean in campaigns that you're treasuring
A
on.
few months now.
Yeah.
What?
State ones.
No, I haven't been doing any rallies.
You're like the good housekeeping seal of approval.
Where?
The first one is gonna be in Kansas, 200 miles on gravel.
It's you with that, and
I'm
it
gonna go
was,
to Salt Lake
what's
City.
his name
I
with
don't
the
know if it's
pictures?
Salt Lake City. That was only like 100 miles.
All
bike.
All bike, yeah.
You in a team? Remember his name is my friend.
Just like individual stuff, so like, it's all on the roads.
Camping, I haven't been
Go
out.
to Iceland,
What?
100.
Yeah, yeah. What am I thinking?
It was like 140 miles. Something like that.
No, 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 no. He takes the pictures at all the
See if I
DTC.
can get the form back.
You know what I'm talking about?
I had no idea that you were that. into it.
Yeah, Jacobs. He's a picture guy.
I mean, I barely put anything in there, but yeah, it's all, try to be, go to races and try to be like
I'm also going to,
top 10 of the years or something. That's the,
also texted it to
Top 10 of the amateurs?
yeah,
That's a shame.
that's the goal.
I'm always amazed, like, people I know are in the top like 20 for the barefoot half, which is mostly amateur.
Yes, come
What are we
on.
trying to do?
Trying to get Brian Binkley to join us.
Oh.
Okay, the dial-in number didn't work, said host hadn't started.
Young man.
So yeah, we're definitely in a different,
Household Hill.
so the one that was on the agenda is different than the one you're logged in here. So
It's out of nowhere.
they're not all, they're not interchangeable.
I ended up running
Fun.
for.
I think if you.
Disconnect, Brian, they're gonna join us because we just sent them the live invite. So hopefully we'll,
Writing's hard. Work for me. Yeah. Be fast.
To push in too fast is brutal. But, a couple miles, a couple times a week when we can. We talked about it. I should migrate to biking.
That's right, you guys know each other.
Writing takes,
I forgot.
writing's a time commitment. I have a read every day. Need to get proper chunk in. I wake up at 5.
Where'd you go?
Joe.
right.
I just ride on it. I have a
Fell up where I-
stationary
where I dropped.
trainer, so I put my bike on a trainer and ride on that. Do a bunch of.
Just, it says he fell at his home in the Riverdale section of the Bronx. I guess he moved there from Connecticut.
Yeah, it's kind of like that. You take the rear wheel off,
Say again?
and then there's like a trainer with a huge
Is that right?
flywheel.
So they've already got it, oh, Jewish, yeah, they gotta get it
The rear
done quick.
cassette on it, so you put your bike racking on.
Yeah, it's a shame. I mean, I thought he was, I
Tire, you spin in this big flat.
don't think he was.
Memorizing
Is there
this?
another?
Working on it.
Age very
Yeah,
bad.
about, you know,
To a,
when I'm getting a little tired, when I need a little nap, I
Right before you go to bed.
Exactly. Really? What's he doing for? Yeah, they, yeah, exactly.
Wow. You know, the history of the rabbit.
Okay.
That's probably more interesting than everything else. Maybe we'll actually find that interesting. He's so unsteady on his feet. 90 and
six,
Numbered paragraphs.
Jumping his kids
5,
still.
0,
So I
3,
had it like
And
that.
God forbid if he
1, 1.
fell.
Like Reading up, Pitt Valley Forge, go up and around the reservoir.
Or the prefaces.
Into Cross Highway, come down.
One really long lost relative of, you know, they made old cottage industry.
Preface to the 12th edition. They've got this gig going.
They do, they got a corner on the market, I mean, you know.
No, they're all in a different, I'm emailing them.
I was
Find 'em.
a law firm in college, and they would,
Try to get 'em to-
have big binders
Just
of
dialing.
laws and cases.
Yeah.
Every week, every day almost. I was like.
Yeah, they supplement and you'd have to put it in, yeah.
No one
Trying to get them to dial in.
Still true.
Lane.
I was at the tail end of the card catalogs and flipping through the microfiche and the microfilm, everything, my kids don't even know what it, don't even know, they have no idea what the struggle was. You know, you get the little thing and you're doing the thing and
We
you
definitely need
you
Brian.
look at the book and then you'd have to find the roll, I mean, it was, you know, these guys are.
I'm like veering
No
over.
idea.
Also.
All right, guys, in the,
Yeah, oh.
so in the interest of time, why don't we flip this, since we have Jen here with us?
Good idea.
All right, Jen, why don't we move, if it's all right with everyone, why don't we move the agenda items around? And we'll do the actuarial report first. Jen Castellano from Millman's here. And we'll allow Brian time to figure out how he's gonna connect with us.
Sure, who needs to?
So you wanna move up? Can we grab a chair and
Move up, and I have some copies.
Okay.
Thank you.
Presentation. 3 different presentations. Well,
Oh, shouldn't have volunteered, yeah.
we'll start them in different directions.
There you go. Here's a few for you guys. I'm good, I think I printed everything out, so.
Oh, I have
Save it.
to.
Save a tree.
All right.
Whoops, sorry.
We got an extra.
Turn it in.
Okay. Evaluations.
Get your,
Very polite, a thank you page at the end.
Yes.
Three
Okay.
handouts or 2, you said?
I heard 3.
There's another.
This is the third.
I have them up on the
Still
screen.
waiting for one last one.
Hi, Brian, can you hear us? He's muted. Did he speak?
There he is.
Hey, Brian, can you say something?
Okay.
You hear us?
Uh-oh. Can you hear us now?
Here's some more.
Brian, grab your phone.
Here, that's fine.
You might need it, it looks similar, but it's not. Take a look at the number in the middle.
Actuarial determined.
One is 5909 and one is 347.
Yeah, 3472.
Okay, all right. Everyone, so for those who, I think for a lot of people, this is gonna be your first time meeting Jen. Right? Well, and yeah, over faces and not over screens. Thanks for coming in person, appreciate that. Eric, did you want to see the letter? Two different letters.
Almost exactly.
Yeah, and I did it too. All right.
All right, you ready?
I think we're ready.
I'll do the letters first because those are quick and easy. Let me get those out done. So there's 2 letters related to the 2 OPEB plans. As most of you, I think, are aware already, we only do OPEB valuations and full OPEB valuations in even numbered years. So July 1st, 2023 being an odd number year. Historically, what was done the prior actuary was 2 years of contributions were calculated with a full valuation. Talking with the town this year, we made a recommendation to do what we call an off-year calculation, which uses projected liabilities, assuming that all our assumptions come true on the liability side, but reflects updated asset information that happened during the fiscal year. Some more up-to-date numbers, not as stale. So in doing that, that's what these two letters represent. The good news is, for fiscal year ending '23, the OPEB plan returned just almost 12% on a market value basis, so that positive return on the investments is helping to reduce the OPEB contribution by a little bit more than what we projected. For the town OPEB plan, the ADC, if you go to the last page, is just south of $3.5 million. We projected it to be $3.6 million, so about $100,000 savings there as a result of investment performance. We are still recognizing market value of assets for purposes of funding. We will likely revisit that with the next full valuation. Now that the plan is a little over 60% funded, it's time to start thinking about using asset smoothing to help to control the volatility and limit volatility on the contribution going forward. But we'll talk about that next year. On the police plan, similar story again, a little over 11% return. Police and fire plan, I should say, sorry. And again, the actually determined contribution for fiscal year '25 is $5.9 million. We were projecting it to be $6.1 million, so again, a couple $100,000 worth of savings as a result of the favorable asset performance during fiscal year. So those are the results of the OPEB off-year calculations. Any questions? Okay. So now we'll move on to the pension plans. Your presentation of the night. Unlike with the OPEB plans, for the pension plans, we do full valuations on an annual basis. I'll walk you through the results of the July 1st, 2023 actuarial evaluations. On the first page of my presentation, you can see a historical picture of the active membership in both plans over the last 5 years. On the left-hand side, we have the police and fire plan. On the right-hand side, we have the town plan. The police and fire plan is still open to new hires. So when you look at that graph, we have three different colors, three different sets of members. First, the really dark blue, the darkest blue are what we call active members. Those are people who are still currently working for the town. In a very light blue section, you can barely see it because it's so small, are the terminated members. These are people who have stopped working, but have yet to start beginning to collect the benefit. And lastly, we have members in pay status. That's the lightest blue color. Those are people who have stopped working for the town and are collecting a monthly benefit from the town as well. One thing to note in this last year is there were 17 new hires to the plan. So the active membership had been pretty level over the last several years, but it increased a bit with this valuation. You'll see the impacts of that kind of flow through the results as we get later on in the presentation. On the town side, that plan is closed to new members. So you can see that dark blue section up top of the graphs has been dwindling over time and will continue to do so as time goes on, and the plan will continue to mature. You'll likewise also continue to see the lighter blue shaded part of the graph continue to increase as members retire and start collecting benefits. Moving on to page 3, we have a distribution of the active membership as of July 1st, 2023. This shows the membership dispersed over different age and service bands. Again, on the left-hand side, the police and fire plan, you can see that the membership is spread out over the various age and service bands, and that is most likely due to the fact that the plan is still open, so you have newer hires coming in with little service and younger ages, but you spread across to those that are at or past normal retirement age and whatnot. On the town side, it's a different picture because the plan has been closed. You can see that it's more concentrated in older employees and longer service employees. That is a function of the maturity of the plan, is not unexpected. I will note there are 2 people in the 0 to 4 year column, which probably is surprising to you, given that the plan's been closed for so long. One of them is a master mechanic, so it's a fire member. That the plan is open to master mechanics still. It's the only group that the plan is still open to. So there's one of those, and the other is a nurse who was part-time for a long time, and eventually went full-time, and so she only has about 4 years of accredited service, so that's why you see that there. But otherwise, everyone has more service, is on the later end of service.
When you see our plan membership at this kind of stage and age against kind of the plan being closed, is that something we should take in consideration with our asset allocations in your mind? Have you reached that stage
I
yet?
don't think you're right there at this point in time. There's still a decent underfunded liability that you want to try to wear down over time. And the plan is maturing, but there's still many years left before that last active person retires from the plan. So you still have a significant amount of time to continue to get the plan fully funded. The goal is that your plan is 100% funded by the time that last active employee retires. So at that point in time, you're going to live off the trust. You're no longer making contributions for past service, right? The concept of intergenerational equity, right? You want to be making contributions for employees while they're working, not after they've already retired. Because you want the right set of taxpayers paying for the right service, people that are giving them services at this point in time. That's a concept that you want to keep in mind in funding a
Good way
plan.
to put it.
Good question.
Okay, on to page 4 is a history of the plan assets over the last 5 years as well. We've graphed both the market value of assets and the actuarial value of assets. So unlike the OPEB plan, we are using an actuarial value of assets for purposes of calculating the funding contribution. And for those who aren't aware what that is, it means that we're recognizing market gains and losses systematically over a 5-year period. So in any given year, your market value of assets will have a gain or a loss, meaning it will either outperform our target return of 6.9% or underperform that. To the extent it does either, we're not going to recognize that gain or loss fully in that year. We're only going to recognize 20% of it, and we'll do that 20% each year for 5 years. Currently, for both plans, you can see that the actuarial value, which is the darker shaded bars, is greater than the market value. And what that means is that there are still more unrecognized losses than there are unrecognized gains. So over the next several years, absent any future market gains, that will put downward pressure on the plan's funded ratio and upward pressure on the contributions, just as for normal attrition of recognizing those losses into the actual value of assets.
Only because you mentioned, I'm just curious, the 6.9%, how does that compare to other towns and municipalities and so forth in the?
So it's a tricky question because when you look at the investment return assumption, it really is a function of how your plan is invested and your asset allocation. And your asset allocation might not be the same as your neighbor's asset allocation. So to compare yourself to your neighbors in a vacuum is risky because it's not a full picture. That being said, and I'll get to this, I think, in a couple pages. Our expectation of the plan's return is right about 6.9%. So I think you're at an interest rate assumption that is appropriate for right now. I'll get more into that in just a minute.
Thank you.
Moving on to page 5, this is a graph of the plan's investment returns, both on a market value basis and on an actual value basis over the last 5 years. The market value is the darker green numbers, and this picture is exactly why we smooth assets for purposes of calculating a funding contribution. The market value returns have bounced all over the place, especially in the last several years, whereas the actual value is more stable over time, which translates to more stable contributions.
Quick question, was it always 5-year smoothing or was it ever 3 years?
You can use any period of years you want.
You changed, did you change it? when you-
No,
Okay.
5 is the standard.
I've seen it.
You never see more than 5.
Okay.
Sometimes you'll see 3 or 4, but 5 is a good period of time to dampen the volatility, but not let the actual value of assets stray too far away from the market value of assets, because you don't want it to be too far away. Okay. Moving on to page 6, we've been looking at the assets, now we're going to take a look at the liability side of things. And a lot went on in both plans as far as the liability is concerned over the last year. I'll start with the town plan. You can see that, then that's the blue section of the graph on the left. The liability as of July 1st, 2023 is $276.1 million. Now that reflects demographic changes and some recommended assumption changes that I'll get to shortly. What we expected the liability to be was about $270.3 million. So it's about a $6 million difference there. There's 2 main reasons for that difference. The first is due to demographic experience over the course of the year. So there was a $2.3 million liability loss. That means the liability increased by $2.3 million than expected, mostly as a result of salary increases being larger than expected. And it was primarily due to a paraprofessional contract that had just been settled. They hadn't gotten salary increases in several years, and they got a large increase, like 30%. And that translated in through the liability. That was the main reason for that loss.
Do you guys, so in a situation like that, where, I don't know what the issue was, I don't know if it was one of those, sometimes these contract negotiations go on for so long, that then you have the big increases that go back. Do you guys factor in an assumption?
Yeah, we do, but we weren't expecting a 30% increase in salary, so that's not.
So that was outsized
Yeah.
versus what?
Higher powers.
Okay.
They just weren't able to hire.
So it was just. so
Okay,
that
well, that's a surprise liability.
Yeah.
That drives
That would show up.
liability upwards as a result.
Bad surprise.
As a result. The second reason, and we'll get to this, is in just a bit, is that we're recommending a change to a slight change to the mortality assumption. Several years ago, you updated to the public plan mortality tables, and those haven't changed. The base so there's two components to the mortality assumption. There's the base table, and there's the mortality improvement scale. So that's the scale that builds in expectations for longevity improvement over time. When we took over, the mortality assumption was using those base public plan mortality tables and the MP 2020 mortality improvement scale. We haven't recommended an upset to that because we were anticipating doing an experience study.
Yeah.
Which
We haven't done yet.
we haven't gotten
Right.
full approval to do. But
That's next.
okay, so we're starting to the point where the mortality assumption it's getting fairly outdated, so we wanted to make a recommendation to the mortality improvement scale. And that does increase the liability by about $3.5 million. It's not required, just something to think about and recommend.
Would you recommend an experience study in place of the scale, or an experience study in addition to the scale?
I would recommend an experience study to study everything but mortality. Because a town this size is not large enough for credible, you don't have enough deaths, especially retiree deaths.
Thank goodness.
For a credible study. There's not enough experience for us to have a credible study. So we would, as part of an experience study, we would recommend using a standard published table, which would be this table.
Okay.
Now, the other assumptions, you have enough experience for a plan your size to study those other assumptions.
And if we were to adopt the new mortality table, when would it go into effect, and when would the town see the new numbers from it?
It's in effect right now. Would affect July 1st, 2023, and be in the fiscal year 25 budget, which the town knows about and has planned for.
Does the town know about that and has planned for that? Or would that be a surprise to the town?
For the, you reviewed this with the town. Right?
Yes. And so I've made another recommended change to help mitigate that impact, both the impacts to these liability increases. And so that other.
And I know you presented to the Board of Finance last week, right? Because I got a call from the chair of the Board of Finance saying, "What is this?" And I said, "I have no idea. You haven't presented to us yet." So it sounds like that it sounds like it's kind of that was the cart before the horse, a little bit, right?
I'm able to, this meeting's scheduled first, but it didn't work out this.
So what was the offset that,
So the offset is to, so we're thinking about the way the contribution is calculated, right? There's three components. There's the normal cost, which is the value of benefits being earned in the upcoming year. There's the past service costs, which is the amortization of the unfunded accrued liability.
Yeah.
And then there's that small interest component, which is pretty insignificant relative to the contribution.
Repeat the last part?
An interest component.
Interest, okay.
Which takes into account the fact that we're calculating the everything as of July 1st, 2023, but the contribution's not made till the next year.
Right.
The past service cost is being amortized over a closed period of time, and that period is currently at 18 years. It's a level dollar amortization, and what that means is it's just absent any future gains and losses, that amortization would be the same.
Okay.
Like a mortgage, right? We're recommending to change that to a level percent amortization, which is consistent with what's being done with the OPEB plan. So they were being funded differently,
Yeah.
with a 2% growth in the amortization payment. So what that does is you're contributing a little bit less now, but a little bit more down the road. So it's like the amortization payment's expected to grow by 2% per year,
Right.
all things being equal.
Okay, so when we're talking, so what this does, right, so our role as the JRIB, the investment board, is and always has been and should always be to characterize the liability from the investment standpoint as accurately as possible.
Correct.
Okay. That is going to result in possibly, right, in adopting new tables that enable us to become more accurate with addressing and characterizing the liability. By adopting those tables, that may create a larger expense, right? That then becomes the town's obligation to meet. So what you're talking about by level percent, level dollar, is you're providing a way for the town
the relief?
to have a little relief in how they meet their obligation to pay. Okay. Our side, right, is going to be to characterize that liability as accurately as possible. Right? Is that right? I mean, that's kind of how we've always
There's
addressed
there's a
these.
natural tension.
There's always, and that's why we're separate from the town.
Right.
That's the tension that exists between the JRIB and the town.
I mean, so what I heard was we were already using level percent with OPEB, and that most of your clients, if not all others, use the level percent method.
It's a common method. Not all use it. Some use level dollar, some use level percent.
Who makes the decision about level percent, level dollars? That's the town, or that's an our
That
decision?
I don't know the answer to.
We do.
We make that decision?
It's an actuarial method, so.
We were level percent,
We were?
and then we went to dollar level. And the only question I'm gonna have is that having the two separate trusts in different vintages, different ages, does that change the methodology we should use in funding the pension trusts?
No, so both plans are being amortized over an 18-year period. So whether it's level dollar or level percent, they're still designed to be fully funded after 18 years.
Okay,
This is how you get there.
you still get to the outcome in 18.
The outcome's the same after end of 18 years, it's just how you get there.
Okay.
Question I had, and I put myself on all different sides, because I used to advocate, I mean, I was on the BOF one of the years, we actually funded an additional amount because of concerns about making sure that there was enough in there. And so, obviously, yes, this mitigates budgetarily, to do this, but getting to, it's like point A to point B, but you're putting different amounts in, and just as I've looked through this, refamiliarizing after a couple of years out of everything, I'm looking at percentages of funding that are sort of in decline. They're further away than they were years ago, so that's a point of concern. So I'm not opposed to making that adjustment, budgetarily or fund reasons, but I just want to make sure that we're going to get to that end goal properly. And so, I also like benchmarking against a broader index, which may have better data, and I do oftentimes think that what of our peers are doing certainly can inform what we're doing. But maybe also sometimes we're careful to do sort of our own standards that's oftentimes stricter. So sort of threading the needle on that, I think is a point of concern. So, and I guess if we do this now and 2 years from now, we say, wait a minute, are we like to Eric's point, are we like upending, or can we peel that back 2 years from now without finding ourselves like just constantly, switching? I'm not against like looking at it, but I would think the board should and the town should evaluate that and make sure that those percent, it's not, that's doing what we actually want it to do, not leaving a hole for the future.
No, understood.
I think last time we had this discussion, we actually mapped it out, like what the impact was over 5 or 10 years of contribution so that the board members could see the difference on the two different funding levels. That may be something that
Yeah, we can
keep some
certainly.
eyes on.
Yeah, I think that's a very good idea, to see what that looks like.
But, you look at the funding ratios, they're decreasing, right? Which is not what we want.
Right, so there's a couple factors contributing, several factors contributing to that. One is, you've lowered your interest rate assumption a bit from 5 years ago to now, so that as you lower the interest rate assumption, that increases liabilities. It's going to decrease your funded ratio. We've had some very difficult and rocky investment years. Fiscal year '21 was very, very, 22, sorry.
22. We had a fabulous 21.
21 was great, but, so let's go back to that graph, right? 21 was a 26.5%, but that's only in excess, you only gotta look at the excess of the 6.9, so it's not really 26.5, it's really 20%, basically, excess return. And then in 22, we had a 9% negative return, but that's really like a 17% negative return, right? So they completely washed out each other. Actually, the loss in 22 more than wiped out the gain in 21, because there was a loss on a larger number. Relatively the same percentage loss on a larger number.
But that's not really,
So that's,
5-year period, the markets are not like, Santa Claus and Goldilocks, they don't always go up every year.
no, but this is what's leading to the deterioration.
No, I understand, but I'm just saying, but it's not like we should consider this to be a particularly, the extremes, 21 and 22 were a little unusual, but net of having one every 5 years being a down year, that's what's gonna happen.
Yeah, so and then we had some liability changes this year that absent the funded ratio, the assumption changes, there's just demographic losses. Last year, we had some demographic losses as well. So that's telling me maybe we need to study the assumptions so that we don't keep having losses and we have a better picture of the liability.
This might be outside of our purview, probably is, but do the rating agencies look unkindly at funding ratios that we're starting to approach?
I called the ratings agencies a year ago to ask them. So our funded ratios are quite high. Okay, overall, quite high. And then they use their own discount rates. They apply their own discount rates.
Okay.
Which
Which are very much higher than ours. Much higher than ours. They use on well over 8% discount rates is what they apply.
Okay, well.
Yeah, to normalize. And they have very low funded ratios, like, they expect very low funded ratios. So we're
fine.
We are very healthy. We're AA rated, we're not AAA rated, we're AA rated, because then we're not a AAA rated because we're not overfunded. Right, if you were over 100% funded, some communities are, all over 100% funded, we would then be AAA.
And I feel like it could be about a decade or so, but we had, those were some, but those were,
We switched.
well, I think when I talk about some of the higher percentages, we peeled some of those factors back, which dropped some of these percentages.
Yes.
And that's part of the, like, if we wanted to run back up to where others were, we'd be,
Yeah,
right?
that's right. That's right. And it's very inefficient for us to think about being really overfunded or that funded, right? You kind of want to be in the zone. The 80s is a great number to be in, the AA, because it doesn't adversely affect the town's rating. It's a good zone.
Carolyn, have we been AAA in the past?
No.
Okay. Yes, we have. Yes, we have.
For the pensions?
No, I'm not the
No,
town. No, the
town.
town. The town's bond
Yes,
rate.
the town.
You got me nervous.
No,
I'm
the
looking it up.
pensions, the
Oh, I'm
pensions.
sorry. Okay.
The pensions are rated
Oh, okay. I
separately.
was just looking, Eric and I
Pension-
were.
Pensions have a separate rating.
Okay.
No, the town is.
Yeah, okay.
Of course.
Okay, well,
Of course. You guys have done on the town. All of you Board of Finance
Yes,
guys.
okay.
You guys get gold stars, A pluses there, triple A plus.
Put his house on the market.
But the-
I wasn't paying attention.
No, but I called our bond rating guys on the pensions just to ask exactly that question because I was really curious one day how it works.
Right.
Yeah, the only thing I'd like to see, and maybe for the next presentation, or if you come back, is just a little bit more forecasting. Maybe Jim remembers being on the Board of Finance, and maybe Ken, there was a lot more forecasting. I don't see any forecasting here in this presentation, so.
Sure.
Yeah.
So for some feedback there, if you want for forecasting, we can certainly include forecasting in the presentation. When it was recommended assumption changes, do you want to see forecasting under all scenarios or like just
Yeah, I think it'd probably be good to get some more transparency, yeah.
I can certainly follow up to the next meeting with some forecasting of the projected contributions over the next 20 years, say, or even 10 years.
Yeah.
Under different methods.
Yeah, I think to give us three different kind of looks, get a sense of how the numbers change, I think would be very helpful.
Yeah, I was trying, and I'm not sure I'm gonna obtain them now, I'm gonna have to go find my paper back up, but I was trying to find from a couple of years ago, like, yeah, when we would get them on the board, it was a little, there were a couple more pages and there were a couple charts that it didn't even necessarily have to go that far out, but it would at least sort of show you, here's where, based on this average, this is next year, it would, some additional information on, I think some more was coming down the line for the smoothing, so we understood how it was being broken up, so we can anticipate.
Sure, yeah, we certainly include that in our final valuation report, but if you'd like me to include that in the presentation materials going forward.
The funded ratio chart, are you taking a snapshot of a particular date?
It's as of the valuation date,
And the valuation date
July
is,
1st.
that's July 1st, so that's another thing too, it's kind of the snapshot of it's the market effectively of,
Everything that's happened in the last 9 months is not captured here.
Okay. All right, so that's a point in time.
So the trend should be a little better.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Right,
Yeah.
okay.
That's good talk.
So, right, so messages, right? Looking through the numbers, right, our liabilities are not quite as accurate as to plan, right? We're a little off, our steering is a little bit off, right? So we should consider changing the mortality tables in order to,
Yeah, I think it's a better representation of future mortality improvements
and for both populations or just the town?
for both populations. And it had relatively the same impact for both plans. On the police and fire plan, that assumption change had about a $3 million impact as well. But there were also significant liability losses on the police and fire plan for three main reasons. Two were related to job-related disabilities that occurred. There was 2 job-related disabilities for some fairly young people. Now, we take an assumption for job-related disability, but it's not a very high assumption because it's not a really frequent thing. So as good as your assumption can be, when that happens, you're gonna suffer a loss. It's just gonna happen because it's just not
Small amount.
but those did increase the liability by $1.3 million more than expected. Likewise, we did find, working with HR this year as part of the implementation of the administration system, we did find some errors in retiree data that was passed on to us from the prior actuary. Correcting those errors increased the liability by about $1.1 million.
What were the errors like?
There were 6 retirees that we were told were receiving a life annuity, but in fact they're receiving a joint survivor annuity.
What?
A joint survivor annuity.
Oh, really?
So if it's paid, that's
Yeah,
been
yeah.
paid over a lifetime of
Right,
2 people,
right.
it's a much higher liability as a result. So,
And that was just a clerical.
yeah, it got discovered as we were kind of combing through the data so carefully. And that's one of the good things about adopting an administration system, it helps you get a better feel for your data, have more accurate data, which then in turn gives you a better liability. So that increased the liability by about $1.1 million. And then likewise, the fire contract finally settled. We had been accounting for some increases, but the increases were just more than we expected, and that produced another $1.2 million of liability loss. So those, a lot of, the liability just moved in the wrong direction this past year for both plans due to demographic experience that, which is mostly, even with good assumption, we probably wouldn't have been able to anticipate. But that being said, it is a good practice to perform an experience study on a periodic basis. I think at this point, it's been about 7 years since your last one.
Yeah.
So, it would be prudent to take another look at the assumptions. That may increase the liability, may decrease the liability. Don't know until we actually do it, but it
In
will.
7 years?
And usually want to do it every 5.
Yeah, see, I thought that was on a roll.
So we held off, at this board, right, we held off because we changed actuaries. So it was prudent to kind of hold off doing an experience study while we were changing actuaries. And then we moved right into moving the administration as well. So now that we're at the end of the administrative changeover, this is the natural time to bring to the board doing an
We need
experience
to
study.
temper expectations about the changeover.
Yes, it's gonna be, I think it's getting, and Megan will talk about that this evening, that we're
Okay,
pushing that back to probably later this year.
Because we're only on employees right now. I don't think they've started
Police and fire,
police and fire.
right? It's a long process. It's a long process. But this would probably, I think this is the year. We've waited long enough, right? So we have on our agenda here, right, allowing for any actions requiring a vote. So I would like to make a motion to authorize Milliman to
like to
conduct
second
the
that.
experience study. Okay. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion?
Sorry, is the cost on that, is that included in our contract, or is that another cost that we're gonna,
That would be
Additional.
That's an
what are
additional.
we talking about? That hasn't that been done, I'm just curious.
I did put together a statement of work last year. I don't remember off the top of my head how much
I
that
don't remember
was. It's probably around 20.
I think 25.
25, I'd say, for both plans.
And time that you expect it to be done?
We could probably get it done in the next 2 to 3 months. The only thing that could hold us up is we've only been your actuary for, say, this is our 3rd valuation now.
Right.
So we don't have 5 years of history, but I can work with Megan on getting our data files that were sent to Hooker and Holcomb. That way we can see the experience in the years that have been prior to us coming on board.
And just ask a naive question. So it's the other assumptions in your experience studies, they're like retirement age and
Retirement assumptions, termination, so leaving
Marriage-
employment.
marriage status.
Can look at marriage status, salary increases,
Right.
inflation. And then we'll look at I kind of looked at the cost method a little bit with this valuation, but we can look at that again. Or just formalize it more so in the study.
And those are done sort of separately for police, fire?
Yeah, we'll look at both plans actually, even within the town plan, we'll look at different
Different
unions
units.
separately, because the town versus the Board of Ed is gonna have vastly different experience. So,
All right. A vote, all in favor?
All right.
Aye. Okay. Any opposed? Abstain? Okay, carries, so we will commence with that. Regarding the mortality, moving to the mortality tables, I know you've already teed it up with the town and the Board of Finance. Is there any harm in waiting for the outcome of the experience study before we go and we implement that? Or we adopt that?
I'm
Can
concerned
you
with
help me
timing of
understand?
finishing the experience study before a budget needs to be finalized.
So, I mean, you just help me understand the impact of not adopting the new mortality tables, new mortality tables. It's March.
Yeah.
March is a tough month, then it's April, then it's budget season. We've been here before.
Every month is a tough.
We go to page 9 and 10 of my presentation.
I don't want to go
It
through.
shows the numbers, both with and without the changes.
Okay.
Page you on?
9 for the police and fire and page 10 for the town. So
Okay.
the baseline column reflects updated demographic experience, updated assets, and no changes to any assumptions or any measures. It's actually a higher contribution than we're proposing on the far right-hand column with the changes. Another option is to phase in the mortality change over 2-year periods, so we can only take half of it this year and half of it next year. But Yeah, the contribution would be higher than currently budgeted for, if we just use the baseline.
Okay, and if we did a phase-in, I mean, would you expect the results to change very much based upon the
A phase-in?
experience study? Yeah, I mean,
I
gives
really
a chance
don't,
to
I
tweak.
really don't know. Sometimes we're surprised at what we find. You know, especially given that I've only been the actuary for a couple of years, so I don't have a lot of history and feel for what's happened in the last 7 years.
Is there I think a good baseline for these decisions, doesn't mean it's the way you should make the decision, but a good baseline should always be what's the best practice. Right? In other words, let's leave aside the questions that we all have, right, for selectmen's here, the budget, all that, but there always should be a best practice answer, and then we can decide whether or not we want to tweak off of that. So your only mission is to serve the integrity of the pension, I think. So what would be the best practice answer to this question?
I mean, using the most up-to-date mortality assumption would be the best practice as far as measuring the liability.
Especially since we're not interested in the experience of the mortality.
Right, that's, the experience study is not gonna change
Correct.
the outcome of that recommendation. That's gonna be the same recommendation whether we do an experience study or not. Now, the experience study might have
For
other
this one, we won't.
offsetting changes that mitigate that or may exacerbate it. We don't know until we do the study. As far as the amortization growth rate, I'll be honest, in a perfect world, I'd love you to say it's level dollar. I always try to advocate and get clients to move to level dollar. Because it doesn't build any increase in, so it gives you cushion in the future for other adverse things that might increase your unfunded liability. In a perfect world, I wouldn't even, I didn't want to recommend this, but it was just something to help meet. Otherwise, you're looking at an increase to $8.4 million, $8.3 million in the increase in fire plan and $6 million on the town side.
It's a big increase.
What was the number, I'm sorry?
It would be the middle column without updating mortality, but not changing the amortization method.
I'd rather take a look at how they all lay out.
You'd increase to almost
Back a month.
$8.3 million on the police and fire and $6 million on the town.
So,
Give them time to prepare.
so,
Well, I have to say I'm a little surprised because we had communications on this, and the only reason I agreed to switch to level percent was because the message I got, I think from you, was that most of your clients use level
They do.
percent.
They do.
Okay.
I'm trying to.
But I didn't hear that you wouldn't recommend it.
It's a reason, no,
If I had, I probably would have said no.
I don't want you to misunderstand. Both methods are reasonable.
Yeah.
Okay, a level percent is reasonable as long as that percentage is not too high. And the measuring stick is that the interest on the unfunded liability is not greater than the amortization payment, right? So your amortization payment is, on that 2% growth for the police and fire plan is 4.3 million. As long as the interest on that 53 million unfunded is not, at 6.9% is not greater than that 4.3 million, which is not, then it's a reasonable method. Because if it's greater, that means your pay down, your principal is just growing, right? We don't want that to happen. So that's our measuring stick.
so I'm, you know, as much as I can keep up with this in this conversation, I'm kind of getting a little bit lost in the numbers. I'd feel a lot more comfortable making this decision if I had few more tables and scenarios in front of me to be able to look at the level dollar, level percent, and if I had a little more time to kind of really begin to understand it. Is there anything wrong with asking you to come back with a little more background and detail and educate us a little more deeply and come back at this next month, at our meeting next month?
Well, the budget concern would be, and we'd have to go and figure out how we wanted to pay for it, but if we changed it now, and I think that's sort of, you know, what the first selectman's comment is that, I said it before, I was leery of those types of things, and I've always been skeptical of administrations doing those types of things. If we had, I think, based on what we heard in that and benchmarking against peers, took that recommendation and loaded that into the budget that now is supposed to get passed next week, and then it goes to a board that can increase it. So as far as making sure that we fully fund, which is an important step, if this number goes up, we have to come up with another not budget process to fully fund. So that's a point of concern. I mean, like, we would have loaded another, $1 million or more into it and sorted that out in the budget process at the proposal phase, and we had all the tools in the toolkit at that point to do that. We have fewer tools now at the Board of Finance level, but but we have none after it moves to that point. So now we also partially got to my question of if there was a decision to go in a different direction next year, is flip-flopping that back a massive issue? How does that sort of play out? Because this is, from a timing perspective, it's a bad timing to say, we'll talk about it in a month.
Well, let me just, I'm sorry, I have to push this a little further. Here's an email from you to Caitlin, Jen. We recommended changing to the level percent amortization over a closed 18-year period with either 2 or 2.5% assumed growth. I mean, that's all I really needed to see. So that was the recommendation from you.
Taking into the holistic picture of the budget constraint streams as well.
Okay.
So, that's
So I
the
felt-
balance.
But the budget, that I would push, that I would push back on, because the budget, and I go back, just to Carolyn's earlier sort of remarks, for the board, right, and the purpose and protecting the fund. And then I go back to rewind, 6, 8, whatever years ago, my position's on it. It's not the budget factor, while it's helpful, I guess if asked by the administration, you can start to pick that apart, I guess, but that's not really the role or supposed to be a factor, unless you really found a scenario where you thought we were backed up against the wall and not gonna be able to cover the ADAC, and somebody said, look, what can we do to try to make this so we can check that box? But you're not talking about a massive number. Certainly take the help anywhere we can get it, but we're not talking, $10 million and Fairfield's gonna all of a sudden not be able to fund their ADAC. But you are right now, from a process standpoint, talking that's actually a very difficult mechanical thing for us to try to
I do
unwind and
apologize for
without.
misunderstanding, because when I communicated the 20% increase to Caitlin, and she fell off her chair. So to me, I read that as, okay, well, maybe I can make it.
Well, it's a big,
So you were-
it's a big.
I recommend.
It's a big number.
Maybe I came in late to the game. By the time I saw it, it was a recommendation.
We're not trying to point
Guys,
fingers, just trying to
this is the tension. Here we go. We're living the tension. So
Yeah, no, this
we're-
is the.
So we're the JRIB, right? This is the JRIB board, and our job is to work hard to characterize the liability to the best of our ability. And we recognize that there's a mortality table that may help us characterize it better, right? More accurately. We also recognize that, we meet with you once a year. It's scheduled for March. This meeting could easily have happened in July or August, right? And then we aren't in the crosshairs of the budget, right? We moved the discount rate discussion to July specifically to try to get out of the budget tension. We have options. We could phase our way into this. We can split this over 2 years, right? So it's not such an abrupt change, right? That might be a little easier and more palatable for all, right? Because it is a pretty abrupt change.
Or you could defer it until the experience study's done, and
Or we could-
for July 2024. But again, it's
And we
a
can.
higher contribution if you do defer
Right.
everything.
Right, and so, with one of those things, it's like compound interest, like you kind of want to, you want to adopt it as soon as you see it, right? But we do want to make a fully informed view. We want to do our job.
So the number in the budget is reflected by the baseline, is that correct?
It's the far right-hand column.
The increase. Right. From right-hand column? This is what you printed to the Board of Finance, then?
I presented this entire thing.
Did you give them all three
They saw
options, and
it.
they preferred three? But the far right reflects the changing to the
Level.
Right, right.
Okay.
I mean, anyway.
So what is the Board of Finance have right now?
They've got the
Alright.
7650272.
And then on the second sheet,
5.4. Well, remember, look, at the end of the day, there's no free lunch, okay?
Yeah, I
The
mean.
numbers, other numbers, and they're gonna, you know, in your world, they're gonna emerge one way or another, right? And I find it hard to believe I'm saying this, but it's not, the numbers here aren't that big that I think we necessarily wanna upset it's almost unfair to them. And,
Well-
you know,
And we've lived this before,
Yeah.
and it was unfair to the town before. Like, we've done this, we've been down this path, and it was unfair to the town before. And I don't wanna make the mistake again.
Yeah, I agree with you.
it's also not the right time to be you know.
Right.
We can deal with it.
I think we can do, so to me, it feels like we study it, we come back to it at a later date.
Especially since we have
This
an
year?
experienced study
I don't-
coming here.
Or we split it over,
Right.
or we split, it- or we phase it over 2 years.
But not this, you mean over the two following
Phase in.
years?
The only thing I would say, just from past experience of being on the board, we really need to make sure that this presentation comes to us months before it gets in the hands of finance.
Yeah.
Right, so that's happened consistently, which is where we stumbled in this process. That's gotta change. So the meeting should have been with Caitlin, the meeting should have been with us.
Yeah, how do we, well, how does that, how can we help that? How can we help that?
you
to
got
happen?
to the one after the last J-Rib. I have to go back and look at the dates, but it would have been after the last J-Rib. The numbers would have.
When I was on the Board of
17.
Finance, this pension board had all the information beforehand. You guys would listen to the meeting. As a matter of fact, when there was this discrepancy, you sent an email during the meeting that this is not the presentation that we received with the previous firm. So somehow, maybe it's
Yep.
because we changed the schedule of our meetings, it got reversed. But I know that we were all in sync by the time the Board of Finance
Yeah.
heard from the actuary.
Yeah.
So somehow, the schedules,
Got moved, but this was
Is
the
it
action.
possible we could have it doesn't be written necessarily, but a policy that our vendors, because it's not anybody's fault, our vendors should not present to other boards numbers that are subject to decisions we're gonna have to make.
Yeah,
In other words, don't fault them, nobody did anything wrong, timing is such and blah, blah, blah. But if there's a set of numbers, if there's a number that's not settled, if we haven't made a decision or sort of voted on it, so to speak, literally or otherwise, and there's some decisions that have to be made, we probably shouldn't be letting those, having those numbers be shown to other boards or the administration until we've made our decision. I'm having trouble
Do it in time.
saying it right. Right, no, of course, that's another issue
I
completely.
think the issues
But-
J-Rib met and then
Right.
didn't have it in that time, and then you're.
And I also-
If I remember.
well,
correctly.
we eliminated the February meeting,
yeah.
Well, that's fine.
but oftentimes,
We're ready in January, so I could.
we could have done it January. Okay, so going forward, we'll pull this,
The
that,
goal is to have these results by like November, December most years.
okay.
because
So we'll,
It's
so we'll
been tough with with the data getting.
Okay.
clear, but-
Yeah.
So could, Carolyn, if you don't mind me asking, but could you just go back? If the 18-year window, and whether you use one method or another, you get to the end goal. Okay. So the difference is, so one of them's a lower payment and one of them is
No,
a
higher payment.
higher payment, but you get to the end goal.
It's amortized over an 18-year period. This is just how you get there.
Yeah, but not to dance on the head of a pin, you could argue that, and this would support your position, that the odds of getting there 18 years later are slightly worse by the way we're doing it. Simply because we're throwing bigger numbers into the future when we don't know what the world will look like, right? If there's some 2008 disaster 6 years from now, and we decide we have to pull our horns in all over the place. So it's just conservative versus less conservative.
That's right.
That's all it is, right?
And you are just putting more money in, it's.
Correct.
You can always
course
change
next year.
course. You're right.
Right, and we could do a course correction and get back where we want to be.
It's a 50-year liability.
Right.
It's true. We can always change.
So I'll make a motion that we accept the mortality table MP 2021 Ultimate with the amortization growth rate with the new funding method of the 2%.
In other words, the far right column.
Far right column, 7.6.
Make a motion, we accept the far right.
For both the police, fire.
Pages 9 and 10.
And the town plan.
Right. I'll second that.
I got a question. This 18 years till we're fully funded. Does this mean next year, we're another 18 years? Is it constantly rolling?
Declining period, so next year will be 17 years.
17, so several years
That's
ago.
why in 18 years, you will be 100% funded. Now, in reality, when we get down to about 10, we're going to we'll actually revisit that because amortization periods of less than 10 can get really volatile if you have a bad year and you have only a short period of time to amortize it over. We'd like to recommend a layered base or something different. The police and fire plan is still open, so you might 10 years might be too short if it's still open at that point in time. So there's, whereas the town plan, that's closed, we'll never recommend extending that amortization period because we want to fund that.
We used to have an open amortization, so it was refigured every year. It wasn't even closed.
And
So
open amortization is very frowned upon in the public pension funding. Closed group, closed amortization, level, layered amortization are best practices.
Okay.
So since the town is closed, right, and in 18 years, we expect it to be fully funded, if not sooner. We have very good markets, good returns, and we're closed, then we get to that funding level much sooner. If we have a stagnant market, downward market, and we don't have recoveries, the US has done very well. All of a sudden, we go back several decades where we weren't necessarily the leaders in the market. We're gonna have to pay a lot more as we get closer to that year 18 out the road.
That's correct.
Different people on the board, and so we should be being more conservative, put more money in now, I think.
There's a balance equation. You have your benefits that are being paid out, plus any expenses you're using the trust to pay for. They're funded by two main sources, the contributions and investment income. So to the extent investments perform well and fund the benefits, the town makes lower contributions and vice versa. Those two have to balance out.
Which I think, Eric, is where at one point the board plans.
Yeah, man, we always pay more money for a long time.
So
Get extra money.
yeah, I think,
Did it continue or did it stop at some point?
well,
It wasn't like a great amount of money.
it wasn't
No,
a huge,
half a
it wasn't a
million.
huge amount. I think it was,
Like
yeah, I think, I think it actually had come after an experience, it might have even come in a year where we had frustrations over an experience study. We said, well, instead of dropping it down, let's at least flat fund it. But it would be something that we could look at if we had opportunities, surplus, things like that would be an avenue that it wouldn't be a bad place to at least put. I mean, I think the theory was it wasn't a lot of money, but everything helps, right?
It was called no.
Exactly.
So this is the number that's currently envisioned in the town.
In the budget?
In the budget.
That is in the budget.
Far right,
Any change is a big deal.
gotcha.
So,
No, the middle's in the budget, right?
Right.
The far right, the far right is envisioned in the budget.
Mortality and the 2%.
All right.
I kind of thought, I didn't realize I thought that this was sort of a done deal for some reason.
That's okay.
But then next year, right, because we want to plan, right, so we said we're going to do this, but next year, we technically.
No problem overfunding it. I mean, it's just that to do it now
Oh, yeah.
is like,
Okay. You're ready.
like we could overfund every year by $500,000 or whatever. We could have done it this year, but at this point in the budget cycle, it's
Right,
problematic.
yeah. Not a runway, we do it in the summer, so, okay,
That means
what do you
that
think?
really the Board of Finance on Monday?
Well,
Wednesday is gonna have, if we do this, they're gonna have to vote to increase the budget and explain why. I think that would be kind of
Right,
embarrassing.
right, right.
Yeah, based on this, we're fine now as far as budget. And then this meeting should occur in that November.
Yeah, well, this meeting, we'll make sure that this meeting happens beforehand going forward because the numbers will be
I
ready.
would say just budget-wise, if there's a way to do it in December or very early January, because there's a lot of bigger structural pieces in the budget. Well, it doesn't get released until the end of February. A lot of those big pieces start to move in the early to mid-January window. and then the rest sort of falls around it, so it's helpful.
And that shouldn't be a problem. The issue, the hardest hurdle for us the last couple of years was getting the data timely.
Yeah.
But now that the administration system is further along with that should be a push of a button.
That will be easier.
Once that's up and running.
Yeah.
So we should have data very early, and that way we can have results very early, and then we can make tweaks, we can have discussions and plan better.
Who knows what other treats you're gonna find in the.
Who knows what other treats we're gonna find? Okay, all right, so any more discussion? Are we good? If not, we're gonna call to vote all those in favor of the far right column.
Oh, second, you're.
Do we have a second?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, all right. All in favor of the far right column?
Far right it
Aye?
is.
Aye? All right, any opposed? Abstain? No? All right, it carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
We always learn something, that's
Yeah, thank you. Most exciting day of the year, this one.
Yeah, I have an unpleasant question. Mortality improvement, that means more people die? You're right.
Okay, guess
It's improvement to longevity, so
The other way around.
live longer.
the other
They
way.
live longer,
That's
okay.
why it's bad.
All right, that's right.
Which is great for those people.
You're thinking like an insurance person.
Go ahead.
We had a great week.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you know that Hal started smoking this week?
If he didn't, off purpose.
Fast cars, whatever, you know.
We got a Corvette.
Right.
There we go. All right, guys. All right, we're gonna move on. Thank you. Hey, Brian, can you hear us? Can we hear you?
Let's see, unmute
Let's see if we can unmute you. Oh,
Oh,
no.
good.
You can hear us though, at least, that's, we're halfway there.
We cannot hear
Hear
you.
us, but we
We can
can't
see
hear
that he's talking.
He hears us, but we cannot hear him. He's muted.
No, but he unmuted and he still couldn't hear it.
Which speaker should
Well, there's
this
a red
be coming out?
line to the microphone.
Yeah, no, he undid it.
Coming out on that,
Oh.
See, there he goes.
on that TV?
No, okay.
Okay, we are having trouble hearing you, Brian. Ay, ay, ay. Okay,
I'm done with these people.
I know.
Thank God.
No, I can't wait. We're just done with tech. Done with tech. Okay, I've got 33% left on my phone, so that's enough. Brian, could you call me on my cell phone and I'll put you on speaker?
We were doing that.
Anybody else on that, like, the other people on the recording?
They said 5/8.
Right.
You said 6.
I wonder if the AA goal for the fund should be explicit in the IPS, if the assets are supporting a goal of the AA fund. We just.
What are the ideas?
Suzanne and Megan, are you able to hear us? Brian, Megan, and Suzanne, are you able to hear us?
You know Nick Lever.
I do know Jen. Yeah, we've met.
He's really, you've been introduced there, really, outside of.
We met at some other thing.
Sometime.
Are you able to hear me?
Right. When they have election night.
I just called in.
I think it was election night.
No.
Yeah, worked in Erica.
So-
Erica's like, I do enough public stuff, she would never join the board.
How many?
I think if
They should, the other people hear us through.
Here we go. All right, let's get Brian on the phone. Here we go.
Kids at household, did I show up?
Hi, Brian.
Hi, Carolyn. Yeah, I could hear you all, too bad you couldn't hear me.
Okay, well, now we can hear you, so we're just gonna put you on my phone.
Suzanne, are you able to
Sounds
hear
good.
us through Brian's phone? No, because she would have heard us, because I've been on the phone with Megan this entire time, and Brian and Suzanne would have heard us.
Okay, well, Brian, we're gonna let you go. Let's do this. Okay, you're up next.
Okay.
Let's move on to item number, well, we're gonna do the Vanguard performance review, please.
Do you want me to share the screen, or does Gabby or someone pull them up?
I have it.
What's best?
Gabby's gonna pull it up right now.
Okay. All right, well, as you're pulling it up, you know, I know there's a long discussion on the actuarial side. I can keep the committee on track, but I don't need to rush it either. Really, what we had on tap for today as far as reviewing was really performance through the end of February. And performance remains, you know, strong on an absolute basis. I do also, in the presentation deck, have our estimates for the expected return of the pension and the OPEB over a 30-year period, since that ties into the actuarial discussion. And I'll get there, but I think where the discount rate is certainly conservative to where our forecasts are over a 30-year time horizon. And then, of course, I'll take any other questions. With that, why don't we, if we go to page what? And I'll have you just page forward. I'll just review the I'll review the capital markets here. This is all through the end of February. When I get to the town's performance, that is the fiscal year to date performance, but this is just showing kind of calendar year looks, 1 year, year to date, and 3 months. So on a year to date basis, the momentum has continued in the equity markets. So year to date through end of February, you see U.S. stocks still up over 6%, and right to the right, non-U.S. stocks, which we hold, up 1.2%. That just continues the strong gains from last year, so that's why you see on a 1 year basis, the last 12 months, U.S. stocks up over 28%, non-U.S. stocks up over 12%. We probably covered this last meeting, but a lot of that outperformance in the U.S. market has been done due to a lot of the tech stocks that you see in the news headlines, like NVIDIA, Facebook, Google, etc. And I realize that there's new committee members, so again, if there's any questions I'm going too fast, let me know, since we kind of cover this in the regular operating rhythm. Staying on this page in the center is the fixed income performance, and has both U.S. bonds and non-U.S. bonds, both of which we hold in the portfolio. Both are indexed, so the gains or the performance would mirror what you see here. So non-U.S. bonds, I'll start with U.S. bonds. On a year-to-date basis, we've seen rates kind of creep up a little bit, so that's why you see a negative return of negative 1.6% on a year-to-date basis. But really, it was a big rebound last year. So U.S. bonds on a 1 year basis still positive 3.5%. We do hold the non-U.S. bonds for the diversification benefit. That certainly came through in 2023 calendar year, but it's also continuing just the first few months of this year. So non-U.S. bonds only down 0.9%. In parentheses, you see hedged. We have, that refers to currency hedging. We currency hedge the non-U.S. bonds because we don't want currency to be leading to a lot of volatility from what should be a conservative asset class. To the right of it, just for argument's sake, you see non-U.S. bonds unhedged. You can see how that shifts around a lot more. It's down 3.4%. The next slide will show, and we've spent a lot of time here since we own the entire market through the index funds that are in the portfolio, but just for to see the full picture, you see it's the large cap stocks that have done particularly well, and of course in the growth sector. So again, those are the tech-related names that you're all familiar with, but it shows you kind of the dispersion that has happened. And that's also the benefit of owning the entire market. You never know what's going to do well and by how much and how quickly it shifts. So we capture that with the investments that we hold in the pension and in the OPEB plan. The next page is just looking at the sectors, backs up what I've been talking about. On the next slide. This is just looking at the gains by all of the sectors. And so while really up to February, the market has been kind of narrowly led, we've started to see that broaden out more recently in the month of March, as more and more consensus tends to be in this, no landing scenario. We don't have a recession here in 2024, so that performance has widened out to other sectors and some of the more cyclical sectors more recently. So we can go on to the next page. This is just looking at the yield curve. If you can page forward. This is just showing the yield curve, so interest rates along different maturities. The dark blue line or greenish line is kind of where we are at the end of February. You see the other two time periods, 3 months ago, then a year ago. Basically what we have here is we still have an inverted yield curve with interest rates higher on the shorter end. And so, we haven't really seen that move too much. Markets are expecting the Fed to cut, maybe in the May, June timeframe. So maybe we'll start to see that yield curve shift as we get further along down the path of this year. If we go to now the next page, we're getting into the performance of the plans. We'll start with the pension plan. So on two kind of takeaways here. On a fiscal year-to-date basis, you see an absolute return of 6.62%. That's on a gross basis. After advisory fees is the 6.6 on a fiscal year-to-date. It is below the policy benchmark. That is really due to the lag in performance that's coming through for private equity and to a lesser extent private real estate. When I get to those pages, remember those asset classes are on a quarter lag. So when I'm here in April, we'll be reporting performance through the end of the first quarter, but that'll capture the full year for private equity, the full calendar year for private equity and private real estate. Just staying on the page, from carrying over some of the returns from last year, a 1 year return, you can see how strong that's been, up 11.99% on an absolute basis, again, slightly behind the benchmark due to the alternatives portfolio. Everything else is indexed in public equity and public fixed income. At the top, just last point on this page, on the top right, you see where we are, our policy targets for each of the asset classes, and then where we are, our current asset allocation. We're within all of our policy targets. We've discussed in the previous meetings, and maybe this will be the new provider, or I could do it at the end of March, but we'll want to reflect at some point that private equity allocation up to 10%. We held back as we were getting to new commitments into the Harbor Rest vehicles, and so we didn't want that to skew the dispersion on the U.S. equity and non-U.S. equity side. But the short story is we're all within the policy targets, and we're constantly rebalancing based on the cash flows that we have in and out of the plan. So for instance, today we just raised cash in the portfolio to meet the March payments that will go out in the beginning of the month. If you go to the next page, this starts to show the performance of the individual funds. So the center of the page, you have the total stock market index on a fiscal year to date, up 15.6%. So very strong, like the earlier numbers I showed. International equities, not as strong, but still up a respectable 6.88% for the total international stock market index. The next page will show the performance of the two fixed income funds. There we go. So on a fiscal year to date, still positive returns from both of those holdings. So you see the total bond market index, fiscal year to date, up 1.72%. And the total international bond, which I referenced earlier, you see up 3.95%. So really strong absolute returns from all of the public asset classes and closely tracking their indices. If you flip to the next page, you'll start to see some of the alternative holdings. And it's notably, you see the roll-up of private equity. So on a fiscal year-to-date basis, 1.17%. And that's below the private equity policy benchmark, which is the Russell 3000 plus 3%. So it's behind these again returns are through 2023, but shouldn't deter you from the strong returns that private equity has generated for the pension plan over longer periods of time. I think that performance tends to get smooth as we, the public equity markets, as I just showed, were up really a lot. Private equity returns happen on a lag. So this is just a mere opposite of what we saw, say, in 2022, where the public equity markets were down a lot in a negative territory, down 18-19%, but private equity really had positive returns in 2022. So that's kind of flipped in the 2023 calendar year. The last comment on private real estate on a fiscal year-to-date basis, again, this is through the end of September. So you see the principal return down 5.8% versus its policy benchmark of negative 4.53. So this all relates to the relative underperformance at the total plan level earlier. But just as an update, we did get the principal 2023 calendar year returns. While it's still negative on a calendar year basis, they were down negative 10.6%. They did outperform their benchmark, which was down 12% for the year. So principal continues to be, a strong manager as far as outperforming their benchmark over long periods of time. If you flip to page 13, it looks at these are looking at the private equity holdings as far as the commitment levels. And it was the next page, I think, is the OPEB plan.
Hey, Brian, while we're on the commitment levels of the private equities, I'm still waiting on the letter from you guys in HarborVest that you guys have agreed to hold our fees flat with the legacy, with our previously agreed fees.
Yes, Carol, I can double check that, but I did send that through a little while ago.
Okay.
If you haven't gotten it, or maybe that sounds like the case, I'll double check my sent item folder. But
okay.
That was that letter was put together and signed by Dan Newhall, so the town has that in writing.
Okay, good. I have to go. If you could double check and just kind of confirm that for me, because that would have escaped my. Would have kind of slipped through my fingers. I'd have my oversight.
Could have been it was a few weeks ago, but nonetheless, regardless, I'll resend
Good.
it.
Yeah.
So.
It's very important that gets into the town files.
Absolutely.
We're going to laminate it, actually.
Yeah.
Any other questions on the private equity?
Exactly,
So these numbers are in there, they're as of September, right? Not December.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. So once we flip to the end of March,
It's got the new one.
Then we'll get the new numbers.
Okay.
we'll get the year-end numbers for all the private holdings, correct? Yeah, it's just that quarter lag.
Now, when we compare the private equity to the Russell 3000 plus like 3%, is that on the same period or is that the most current Russell?
lagged.
What's that?
It's also lagged on a 3-month lag,
Okay.
just to be comparable.
Same periods, okay.
Yeah. Okay, the next page is looking at the OPEB plan. So the numbers are different because it has a different asset allocation, a little bit more equity exposure, a little bit more real estate exposure, 10% target to private real estate, and didn't hold private equity in the past, like the Lexington and Mesereau funds. So that explains the difference between the two plans. So, but on a fiscal year-to-date basis, it's outperformed the pension plan, which you would expect because of the riskier profile. So you see on a fiscal year-to-date basis, 8.76% gross, 8.74 net, and just above the policy benchmark. So it didn't have as much dispersion or tracking error with not having as much or really private equity in there. And then on the 1 year basis, just like the pension, even stronger than the pension plan, but 1 year basis up 15% on an absolute basis over the policy benchmark of 14.6. All of those policy targets, the asset allocation, current asset allocation versus policy, all within range. Of course, we don't have really much, a lot less, just usually on an annual basis, or semi-annual, that we'll see contribution or any kind of flows into or out of the OPEB plan. I think most recently it's been contributions in. So same hold, I won't go through the same equity and fixed income holdings since they're the same. But again, before I go to the next section, let me just pause. Kind of comments, questions, thoughts from the JRIP?
Nope, we're good.
So if we go to the next section, which starts on page 20, I include this as we update our capital market assumptions, and since it dovetails with the actuarial conversation. So what this is looking at the 30-year time horizon. You see the target asset allocation on this page for the pension plan, the 30%, 20% down the line. The numbers to the right of those target allocation are Vanguard's capital market assumptions or expected returns for those asset classes over the next 30 years. At an aggregate level, at a plan level, with the target asset allocation, let's call it 60-40, the expected return for this portfolio is 7.2%. So above the current discount rate of 6.9. And then right below that, we always, when you're talking about a forecast, we like to provide a distribution or a range, since you're very rarely right on the median. So you could see kind of the 25th to 75th percentile, anywhere from 6.5% on the lower end of the range to up to 7.8%. So I think showing this just to say that I think that the current discount rate could easily be supported by the most recent capital market assumptions. Something we've talked about in the past is one of the biggest things that's been positive for investors is the higher expected returns that we have from U.S. bonds and say versus 12, 18 months ago. So that's kind of been the biggest shift in the capital markets as far as how much U.S. bonds have come up. In some ways, U.S. equities have come down because of how well the forward-looking returns have come down because of how well U.S. equities have continued to do. The next page is just looking at the same assumptions, but for the OPEB plan. So it's on page 21, a slightly higher expected return for the OPEB plan of 7.62%, reflecting the different or higher equity allocation. So 7.62% over a 30-year time horizon.
That's always good to see.
Yeah.
When you model it out.
I have one off-topic but related, maybe more to the letter, Carolyn, to the committee. So, Carolyn, I know there was a request to start preparing, getting all the documents that Vanguard has produced, the performance reports, the statements for the last, let's call it 4 years. Make sure the town has those records. So I've been working with Caitlin to set up. It's a very large file. We couldn't do it via email. We're talking, well over 100 documents that will work on transferring from Vanguard to the town. You may have them through the years, through all of our meetings, but we'll make sure that the town has them, and we've set up a shared folder or that's the right thing that the town is calling it. And we'll make sure we'll get those over.
Great, no, thank you for doing that. I just want to make sure we have a complete archive.
Yeah, because those are the two action items, is have the complete archive and then with that letter on harbor best fees holding steady.
Yeah, because, you never know, they might forget what they agreed to.
No, that's in writing, yeah. It's on Vanguard letterhead. It's been signed by Dan Duval, principal of the firm, so the town will have that.
That's great, thank
Or
you.
should have that, yeah.
Thank you. And you're committed to be with us till, you want to remind us of the drop dead date?
Yes, yeah, so I should have maybe said some of this in the beginning, that it feels like regular meeting, but the deal between Mercer and Vanguard closed on the 15th, so as of 15th, an acquisition closed of Mercer purchasing Vanguard's institutional advisory business. And so the arrangement is to, and this is for all the public funds that we work with, it'd be 90 days post that close. So 90 days post March 15th. I think that brings us out to June 13th specifically. But I and the team will continue to service the town, make sure that you're still getting performance reports. We're still doing the capital raises to meet the pension payroll like we did the trade today. Still getting distributions, for instance, from your private equity partners. A couple of those will be paid out tomorrow from Lexington. Their three funds are making a distribution on tomorrow for Lexington 2, 3, and 4. So all of that will continue to be with you. And I was planning to be there certainly for the April meeting, which is blocked off for April 24th.
Wow. All right, well, we look forward to seeing you on April 24th. Thank you for staying with us through the transition period, Brian. Any questions for Brian, guys? Nope. All right. Thank you. I'm gonna hang up my phone, so we're gonna make you so you can't speak anymore because I'm almost out of power. Thanks.
Thanks, Brian.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye. All right, there we go. All right. Quick update on the OCIO. So, let me give you a quick update on the OCIO search. So Barclay Douglas is the consultant, as you know, who we hired. Vanguard is paying for his services. He's invoicing Vanguard directly, not through us. Yep.
To show how much integrity we have, they offered us more than Barclay is charging.
They did. They did, but we chose
No, of
what we
course.
felt was best, and we didn't.
I'm just saying that Barclay is working at a fair rate.
Berkeley is really working at a fair rate.
Yeah.
For those of you who were volunteered to be part of kind of his survey, I think he was complete and there.
Very good.
You had a good, hopefully a good conversation with him. So I think his process, I hope you found, Nick, for the benefit of you who've been sworn in for 3 hours now, 4 hours now. So when we were advised by Vanguard that they were moving on from us.
Yes.
We had to, and they were giving us very little time to find a new OCIO. We reached out to, through our network, and were able to identify, Vanguard gave us a list of consultants, and we were able to cross-check that with a friend of ours, kind of from Common Fund, and we found a list of capable OCIOs who we reached out to. We formed a subcommittee, an OCIO search committee. We then interviewed three of the consultants. We chose one. His name is Barclay Douglas. He works for himself at a place called, he calls himself Criterium. And his process, he started with a full, he spent one-on-one time with anyone from the JRIB who wanted to contribute thoughts. He had a survey that he went through and just got a sense of, what are you looking for? Compiled everyone's thoughts, and then went out, and he's doing a targeted RFP process for us. Okay? The next step of the targeted RFP is the subcommittee's going to meet on April 10th from 6 to 8. You're welcome to come. I know how much you guys love this. And that's where we'll narrow the list down to 2 to 4 candidates. That'll be a 1 to 2 hour long WebEx, only on WebEx event. Then the subcommittee will meet again on April 17th, a week later. That's a long one. That'll probably be a 4 hour long meeting, 4 to 8. And that will be to do the 3 finalists in person. And that's where we'll get to spend time with kind of the relationship managers of each, get to know the kind of the touch points, how they work. Out of those 3, the subcommittee, kind of the process I'd like to recommend we follow, given our time crunch, is we'd like to then select 1 out of that we would put forward to the JRIB the week after that, on April 24th, for the JRIB to meet in person, for then consideration and final vote.
And that's a vote of the whole board.
And that's the vote of the whole board. So I would encourage you, if you would like to be part of the vetting, to come the week before April 17th to have the opportunity to evaluate the finalists.
When does Barclay kind of take a step back at once the
Finalists are done?
yeah.
No, his services continue. That was one of the opportunities, that was one of the unique things with him. He will then help us negotiate the contracts, make sure we understand fully all of the costs, the embedded costs, make sure that they also understand that they're gonna pick up the services and the reporting with our private equity, with our third-party vendors and funds, and make sure that we're doing the back end too, that we're connected into the custodian and the, and payment.
And he
And
wants
Milton.
to write a living will.
And then he wants to write effectively, which is the living will, so help us with the investment policy statement and make sure it's all integrated.
Right.
So he will do all of that for us, and
Will he make a recommendation that he'll have, or he's have an opinion?
he will not have an opinion. No, that he's helping to steer this, based upon our initial input, and then bring it in, but it will be our choice. And with the whole idea that we get all of those assets and everything moved over, by the end of May. So we beat the deadline. Right, and so then he'll tie up and finish up for us, so we get kind of this full service. Really nice.
So he'll be the last guy. He'll make sure that everything's in place, and then when he signs off on it, then we're
Yeah,
good to go.
yes. That was really the added step we had with him. So the thing with working with him, Barclay, is he takes very few clients.
Right.
It was one of those things where if he will take you.
Right. You're gonna meet his criteria, not the other way
If he will
around.
take you, you will love working with him.
Yeah.
And we've had a really great experience with him thus far, I think.
It's nice working with like you said, a guy who only takes a handful of clients at a time, or a year probably, and is a sole practitioner.
Yeah,
We're dealing with him, he's available to us. It's been a very good experience.
it's been a very good experience. Yes, and he is so well-versed, as everyone.
Yeah, and the other 2 people we interviewed were fine, we probably would have done just fine with them, but I don't think there was any comparison.
Really? That's good.
Yeah, there really wasn't.
No, I think he likes doing this.
Yeah, you can tell, he's got a passion.
He has a passion for it, right? I mean, so he's, yeah, so we're on target. I can't believe I'm saying that, right? Knock on wood, we are on target. So I'm happy for that. On the item, let's see, Megan, you've been very patiently standing by, and of course you can't speak with us. But I think we have you on the phone. You wanted to give a brief update on the administrative stuff?
Yes. Can you hear me?
We can.
Oh, good. Okay. So the Milliman implementation, after a pause, is now moving forward again. So they're programming the system, and they'll start testing within the next 6 weeks. So right now it's working on programming. Then they move into testing on the town side. We're bringing the restated plan document to each of the unions for their review and comment, and then we will bring it to this board for your review and adoption. And then I understand we bring it to the RTM, and they have 60 days to reject it after you have adopted it. So the target date with all those timeframes will be August 1st for go live, and I feel like we're actually gonna finally meet this target.
Yay!
Who's doing the unaffiliated review?
I don't have a contact. Is there a guiding document? Is that group 13?
Yes, I think that's the number, yes.
I have no guiding document for group 13, so I
know one exists.
You do know one exists.
Well, I've seen one. I can get you one, I don't know what the date on it is, but I can get my contact, it was before me on the board who has one.
Yes, anything is helpful.
I'll put it on my list. I mean,
Conference.
okay. I mean, there's a town side, it's unaffiliated, and the Board of Ed side, it's unaffiliated, right? So I don't know if it's the same or different, or, I mean, I can only speak from the DOE side.
It's different. We have them categorized differently in the Milliman system. So we have the group 13 people on the Board of Ed side, and then we have the management and elected on the town side. There's not much by way of documentation on the town side for unaffiliated either. So I don't know. I'll check with Kathleen, the HR director, to see what she thinks should be reviewed on the town side for unaffiliated. I don't know who to bring that to, as there is no union president because it's an unaffiliated group.
Is group 13 related to Area 51?
I am group 13, so I've got a vested interest in this, so that's why I asked. I'll see what I can do. I'm off tomorrow, but by Monday, hopefully I'll be able to at least give you how my exploration goes, We'll see.
Thank you. Any help is great. So once we've implemented and we go live with Milliman on the town side, then we'll start the police and fire. This year is a COLA for everybody. So Milliman will work with us on looking at the data for police and fire if we engage them to do so. I think it's a good idea because in our deep dive of COLA for just the town and BOE last year, we found a lot of inaccuracies. So we think that if we engage Milliman on the COLA for police and fire for the 2024 COLA, we're going to catch a lot of things that are going to become important when we move the administration over. Anything we do with these deep dives helps us refine the data and get good data into their system. So that's something that we brought up last week, starting to think about COLA, and they asked if we wanted to engage them for that deep dive again. And I'm not sure who has the authority. Last year I worked with Jared on it. So if it goes to, I don't know if it goes through the board or through finance. I think finance paid the bill for it. I'm not sure what I need to do for that.
Boy, we'll have to come back around on that one.
Okay.
We'll have to look at the history on that one. On the COLA increases, I don't think that's necessarily me. I don't think that's the board. I think that's the town, but.
Okay.
Oh, that makes sense. Since I worked with the CFO on it last year, that makes sense.
Yeah, I think in the past 3 years, I think I actually rejected those when I saw those invoices come in, and I think we pushed them back. We went through the law firm to verify that that was the appropriate course. But we can look up the history on that.
Okay. Any questions on Milliman? Okay, the other item next on the list is corrections. So we took a look back at all of the 2023 retirements and early 2024 retirements, just as a matter of course to audit our work. And there were 9 corrections that needed to be implemented. There was 8 underpayments, 1 overpayment. We worked with the town attorney, we worked with Carolyn to get these all corrected and sent off to the Custody Bank and letters sent to the participants. Everything is all set in the system for April 1st for the corrected pension payments and any over or under payments that needed to be recouped.
So I just want to thank you guys. And one of the people that I brought forward, she wrote a letter, and you guys figured it out and sent it, and I appreciate the diligence on that, and I know she was very appreciative as well, so I do appreciate you guys doing that.
And I tell you, and I called her to thank her because it was her work that identified where the problem was and the error was, and I thanked her for her great effort. But yeah, no, what was her name? Barbara
Pinnell.
Pinnell. I thanked her for her diligence in identifying the error and bringing it to our attention, and told her we were able to find 9 others who had errors. They were small,
Yeah.
but she found them. And then I think they were very happy with her letters, and she was absolutely thrilled.
Yes.
And I just said, thank you so much for doing your part.
Yeah.
Is this rare? Something like this happens?
An error like that?
Yeah. That they have 9 that were correct?
So what happened, I think what came about, we're finding with the transition to Milliman, right, that there's been some level of discretion that a benefit manager has been able to give over the years about how things were applied, how, things were calculated. There have been small clerical errors over the years, and some inconsistencies. And the one thing that the Milliman system is requiring is consistency. And in this case, this was a clerical error that was less than a year old.
Yeah, it was, she retired in January or February. I
So
forget
it
what
was, do you use your average salary or the last salary?
Yeah.
Right, when you retire? And it was just the document itself was unclear. So they're forcing the Milliman process by requiring consistency is forcing a look back to the documents. And where the document itself is unclear, it's forcing new clarity in the documents. Right? So it's forcing a complete refresh of the plan documents in order to then tie all the way in.
And on top of it, I mean, it's that, they asked her back to do a job, and her step was going up because she asked her back because there was a shortage, or
Yeah.
it was a lot of moving parts there. And
So the answer is no, it's not very common.
Involved.
Yeah, and I think we've unearthed very few clerical errors. With 50 years of filing cabinets being piled into the Milliman system. So far so good. We've yet to do police and fire though, right?
Yes.
So-
We're all prepared for a long haul on that one.
So Megan, anything else?
Just that as you know, the 7/1/2023 valuation is complete. Jen's presentation gave you all that information. Part of that work that Milliman does with the valuation is generating pension statements that we then mail to participants. That's yet another opportunity for us to catch anything. So I sent out the statements with a letter saying this is your 7/1/2023 statement. It's a picture in time. If anything is inaccurate, call our office and we'll figure it out. So I have had a couple of questions, just another opportunity for us to refine the data before everything goes to Milliman. Jen mentioned in one of the charts where it was someone with 1 to 5 years, a part-time nurse who went full-time. They're a complicated group, and so I've had questions on their statements, but it's easily explained to them, this one picture in time, but everything else is programmed appropriately with their part-time service, so that seems to be working, which is good.
Any chance that you would edit that, or would that be on the portal? I had one person ask me, why isn't the 5-year payout in there, on there, the potential 5-year payout? And the third option, which is the 50% for the spouse, for the other beneficiary isn't on there. It's only 2 of the 3 options. I mean, it's not a big deal. I was like, this is more of a general.
When we go live with Milliman, so the assumptions are listed on the back of that statement,
Yeah.
like you said, and it's just one of the options, which is the assumption that's used. When we go live with Milliman, participants will be able to go onto their system and model those different options at their leisure. So if they're anticipating retiring in 4 years and they want to see what their 3 options are going to be in 4 years, my understanding is that they'll be able to do that with Milliman through self-service portal. So right now, all they have access to is that once a year picture in time statement, but then going forward with Milliman, they'll have much more access to their data for more in-depth planning in their retirement.
That's kind of what I told them. So, all right, great.
Okay, that's it.
May I ask a question? Tell me if I'm hallucinating and tell me if I should ask this question offline. But I kind of remember like my first meeting, there was a discussion about OPEB and payments being made outside of the fund. So we were waiting to build up a fund balance and then only recently started making OPEB payments out of the fund. Is that right?
No, so we don't yet, to be continued. We're just beginning to discuss whether or not we will make distributions out of OPEB. We don't currently make regular distributions. We don't pay for the OPEB.
Paying as we go, sort of outside of the fund.
Correct. Right.
Are we indifferent?
No, I think we're pretty indifferent.
Okay.
I mean, now that the fund's at a size, it might make sense to do the math around that and say, should we start making distributions out of it?
But are
Expenses.
the employees who contribute indifferent? I mean, they're.
Plans?
I know there's some CBAs that may address it, so I think it's a more of a microscopic look that we have to look at for each bargaining unit. I don't know if there's any language on the town side when it comes to OPEB, but I know there is on the police fire side.
And they're different, so.
I don't think anyone on the town side contributes to OPEB anymore. Nurses did, but then their strategy and their contract language changed. So they no.
So we're gonna have to learn, that's gonna extend beyond our reach tonight, but I think we can certainly begin to inquire. Megan, is that something that you could help us?
Or is that a legal issue or?
That's gonna be a lot of different issues. That's
Okay.
gonna be which plans, that's gonna touch a lot of different, that's probably a call to the outside counsel first, right?
Okay.
Yeah, I
And
think
delete all the
outside
collective
counsel
bargaining
would probably
agreements.
be able to present something saying the town plan is gonna be represented this way, the police fire plan is represented this way.
Thank you.
Yeah. Before we wrap it up, guys, we have another item of new business. Ben has been sitting here all week. This is it. This is super duper exciting, guys. So.
If there's like an outlier that says no skills, that would.
Might be me.
So we have.
Well, no skills, you check that off.
So, well, Nick is our newest member of the board. We have an opening on the board, and Bill has asked, so what type of, what am I looking for from as far as replacements? And so we asked Ben if he would undertake a survey to do a board skills matrix, so
Yeah,
take it away, Ben.
I think I kind of illustrated what that is, but essentially we asked a bunch of questions, gathered some data. He was looking at what this current board has in terms of skills, degrees, experience, with hope that we can identify what we're missing and also what we maybe don't need more of. And so on the second page, this is pretty common knowledge, but JREB 50 members, 2 boards. We have the 7 union town reps, and then we have the 8 appointed and confirmed volunteers. And that's who we're mainly going to be looking at in this, just because they have way higher turnover. If you look at the data, pretty much all the union reps are 5+ years on the board. And it's here we can maybe have a little more say in who we want. So this is all the raw data. We just really looked at all the questions you guys answered, plus some other stuff. And we kind of took that and split out the now 7 current volunteers. And what we found, very interestingly, is that there's plenty of alternative investment experience represented. And if you can look at that column, there's not a lot of legal, compliance, or HR, any of those fields. We don't see a lot of. And in terms of future leadership, because Carolyn will be stepping down somewhat soon.
What, really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Not just, was I not supposed to?
Thanks for that, yeah, I know.
Here, right?
Yeah. It would be very nice to have other folks willing to chair, given the fact, come on, guys, I got off of a plane from Brazil this morning. I'm running a lot of directions, so it's a heavy lift.
Yeah, so there's, on the police and fire board, there are a few individuals who raised their hand and said they'd be willing to lead it, but we only saw one of those among town employees board members, so maybe finding another individual who'd be more comfortable leading or willing to, right? It's nice to have people who want to take that initiative and not shoved into the role so much. And there's some other smaller stuff. In terms of partisan balance, the board's pretty fair. In gender and race, it's not the most diverse group. Neither is it.
True.
Yeah, I mean, this can be used however we want it
Is
to.
there, I'm sorry, not for you, Ben, but is there any, it could be for you, is there any reason why the chairperson should be from police fire versus town? I can't imagine, I'm just curious. I mean, is there any reason why it would
No.
alternate or?
Chair of JRIP?
Yeah, chair of the
No.
chair.
No, no.
I can't see it, I'm just.
No, and it doesn't matter. I think,
No, at any given time, it certainly doesn't matter. I'm just wondering if over time there's been a pattern or. if
no,
there's-
but remember the police and fire is shorter terms than the town side serve a little bit longer than police and fire, 3 years. Town's 5. Remember you got the 2 boards. So oftentimes you don't have, everybody wants to chair, right? And so if you have 2, everyone's just from police and fire wants to chair, then you also need somebody from the town side to chair the town board,
Right.
right? So you kind of need to have leadership on both.
And I think the only thing that's codified is that the first select person needs to be the chairperson of the police fire pension board.
That's right.
So everything else is pretty much.
It's free, yeah. Yep, right, right. And the chair has the chairman of the JRIB has the added responsibility of going before the Board of Finance once a quarter to do the quarterly review, once a year before the RTM. And then you see the invoices that come in and you approve the invoices. And when there's a dispute or there's some item of question, you're pulled into the conversation.
Other than that, it's nothing.
It's nothing. It's a piece of cake. So when there's like, a lawsuit or class action we're doing, or, administrative, redo, new actuaries. We've done a lot over the past, we have really moved this board. Like, we've done a lot over the past 4 years.
Like 2 managers, I mean, we've had Vanguard, and we had,
2 OCIO searches.
who was that before that,
There's a lot.
It's been a lot. We've really done a lot.
Nice guys.
Ben, don't you just add up the checks and that person becomes chair? And that would be Tom. Counted them.
It's interesting, for that skills board is lacking, that was a question asking if anyone on the board thought there were skills that needed to be added. And those, I believe at least 2 out of the 3 people who had opinions on that also thought it was compliance was an area that we needed to add things. So it was interesting to see those needs line up.
Well, I think traditionally, my experience, having been on the board and off the board and all around, is that we tend to have, although Brian broke that spell, so to speak, because Brian had liability experience.
He did.
But I
Yeah.
think traditionally, most people who join the pension board, I think they come on thinking that it's an investment job. And I don't think most people understand, for whatever reason, that it's an asset and a liability job.
Yeah.
And I think this meeting tonight with our person here from Milliman, Milliman was on mine. Yeah, showed how important it is to have an understanding of the liability side. And it's just as much a lever as the investment side, or more, actually. Because we don't really, with the best thing we can do with the investments is set up a portfolio and hope for the best, so to speak. But the liability side, there's some real decisions to have to be made.
Yep.
Like we found tonight.
Yeah, and there's a compliance side, there's a governance side. And we really get into.
We get volume as we're about to adjourn.
That works.
There we go.
I do find too that, some of the issues I think that we're gonna be confronting going forward, I happen to believe if our first selectman on the team were to reopen the charter, I think there are some areas that the town has, that maybe the JRIB, I think there are skills on the JRIB, that, cash, whether it be cash management, some areas that the JRIB should maybe have maybe a look at too. I think that there are aspects of the pensions and the oversight of the pensions that don't have a natural home, right? They kind of fall into this who's responsible for what zone that perhaps could be
401k.
better defined, right? And so those are things that would be helpful to expand some of these skills for. Yeah. So, for food for thought, but I think it's very helpful because we don't know what skills are around the table.
People around this table don't know what you're talking about. Ken can explain it in terms of cash management.
Let's not go there too.
So I hope this helps, like that, Bill, I don't know if this helps you kind of think about who's here and who does what, because you have a live position to fill, right? And Kevin Shadeen has left the board, or he's hanging on because we've kind of asked him just to help if we need a quorum for meetings for the OCIO.
This is really helpful, but, I'm looking for recommendations from, so.
Yep, so we have an opening now, right? So think about that, guys, if you have any thoughts of who.
Best recommendations are gonna come from us. Not, I should say the best, but good recommendations,
Yes.
because we know what this job's about.
So we get,
It's not about someone identifying some great investments.
right.
Right.
Sorry,
So
sir.
you get, on the website, right, people could submit things,
Yeah.
their resumes, right? Does it
Yeah.
make sense to pull up once in a while these resumes to identify people we
can
might
send it
know?
around. We can
That's,
send
or just who these people are, right? So when you see them, we might know them, we might not know them, we might run into them at different
That's actually a
events.
good idea.
Yeah, that is.
I went to a conference, and one of the speakers was somebody I knew from a decade ago. Had no idea, I knew she was in town, went up to her, and she was speaking on, where she was, and, investment manager, a consultant.
But
And then I said, but then they're.
they wouldn't be able to do it, right? Or would they? Are they?
I wouldn't, no, I spoke to her, she wouldn't do it because now she's with a company that we're invested in, so from that aspect, but, but I crossed the path with another person, at a university event, and,
Yeah.
it's like, gotta submit your thing to there, and, but if there's no position, if it's not open, then at some point.
Yeah. I mean, it's great to have a bench. I'm sorry.
That's a great point. We've never had a member that's been affiliated with one of the universities.
No, I haven't.
Maybe somebody from academia may not be
Yeah.
bad to have on the board, as long as they're a town resident.
There are plenty, 2 universities here, and other universities bound to have somebody.
Yeah.
And with that compliance or.
Yeah, that's a good thought. I mean, that's a.
Work at other universities that aren't even in town, so.
Right.
Just summing up here, because I think Eric made a good point, but if I'm understanding right, so Bill, the town has a I'm just talking, a portal where people in town can offer their services, can say, I'd like to do something in town, here's my credentials, and then we get in touch with them and say, we think you might be good for this board?
You put
Or is that aspirational?
That's aspirational. That's
Okay.
what we'd like to get to.
Okay.
And there's probably ways to do that we.
Because if we
But
could,
right now, someone hears of an opening and they apply for an opening, there's an online form.
Right.
But it would be better to have credentials and then match the people with skill sets.
Right,
That would-
right. I think what you're saying, if I'm hearing Eric
You know,
right, is
identify
that if
people.
there was a pool of people who want to volunteer, and we had access to that, just even for privacy, with just the names, somebody might say, hey, that's my neighbor Joe, he's really a whiz with liabilities, I tell you so. And I'd like to approach him and see if he'd be interested in this board, right? Because we have to figure out ways to take people who want to serve and put them in the right spots.
That's right.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
And I would say, just one other thing, is that in all this, you're new to your job, so you have a lot of opportunities to make things better here. There's a lot of people who want to serve.
Yeah.
Who either don't know the opportunities, or, maybe they're new to town, or they're not so outgoing, or whatever it may be, they're a little shy or nervous about, or, no matter how old you get, it's always a little frightening joining something new and so forth.
I think we gotta sell the board, though. I mean, we're not, high stress, we're not, we're not, hours,
It's like
we go 2 hours a month or 2 hours every couple of months. I mean, it's not like we're here hours until midnight, so I think it's sell the
It's
board.
like you don't even know who's what party on this,
No.
which is amazing. Yeah.
That's the idea, right? That's,
Without question.
this is a good board. This has always been a good board.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Though as you look around at the boards that need to have spaces filled, does J-Ribs kind of rise to the top in priorities? I would think it'd be pretty close to the top.
It is now because we filled the other ones, so, but when we had an opening on the Water Pollution Control Authority, and we're spending probably $110 million over the next 10 years, that was sort of the top, because you gotta flush your toilet, but you also need to pay your attention, But one of the things that relieves a little bit is that there's already a core group of people that are highly functioning, so it's not like you need that extra person to survive, but you do need them. So you're saying we need to find not only one, but we also need to look for your.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I would like to find a kind of a glide path, kind of off, or an ability to offload, maybe switch out of the chair and just be a board member, right? To be chair is a lot of work for me, right? Right now, it's been a lot of.
It's just a lot of work. You don't have to qualify.
It's been a lot of work, and especially with the OCIO search going on. I mean, that was.
I think the board should know, because I'm on that committee, Carolyn deserves, I won't say a round of applause to embarrass her, but the convincing of Vanguard and Harborvest, I'm sorry, to hold our fees is a meaningful legacy.
Yeah.
On top of everything else you've done, we can put dollars and cents on that. And it's pretty impressive.
Thank you.
And they weren't happy.
No, we weren't happy. No.
It's building that pipeline of talent down the road. So at any given time, we know certain people, your term is up on this year, whether you decide to come back is another thing.
Right. I mean, I'd be happy to stay, but not on the chair. Like I'm gonna have to offload the chair responsibility.
We'll get Ken back, so I think we're good.
What?
Ken's back, so we're.
Get back.
I move to allow Carolyn to go home after a trip to Brazil and go to sleep.
I'll second that.
You guys. Appreciate that. Nice job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good meeting.
Good meeting.
Good night, Sue.
Good night. Thank you.
Megan, thank you.
Thank you for this.